We, as well as a lot of other research institutions, have looked a lot at the whole issue of economic mobility in America. Can people expect to move up if they work hard and so forth? And how is their trajectory in life likely to compare with their parents? And there's no question that you see, I think, particularly among Trump supporters, white working class, black lower income people as well, a lot of others, a feeling that the deck is somehow stacked against them, that they are not going to be better off, and the data is very supportive of that, and they're very pessimistic about the future. They also feel increasingly, I think, and you saw this very much in the election, that somehow there are obstacles that are being placed in front of them in some way. Everything from sort of a cronyism of various kinds. There are people making out very well in America, but not them. Immigration, and so on. It doesn't have to be correct, but there's absolutely a perception of that. And so I think when you look at this, and you do recognize that we see a deindustrialization of much of America, particularly the smaller industrial towns in the South, in the Midwest, where we saw such heavy vote for Trump. There is a realism to that. So I think in terms of how one is going to try to deal with this, I think a number of steps. First of all, I think for many of these people, getting government to work in an everyday basis is so important. These are people who feel that the VA has let them down, they can't get an appointment, there's potholes in the road, all these kinds of things. So I think one element is both Republicans and Democrats, actually, and the White House, beginning to take some steps to actually bring some effectiveness and efficiency back to government, getting things straight. I think, secondly, that there are deep-seated issues, both economically and socially in this country. When we look at things like healthcare, we look at social policy and so on. Again, when we look at economic mobility in this country, we see a stickiness at the bottom. We see a failure of the school systems. There are many people in this country of all races who cannot expect their local public school to actually provide them anything approaching a normal education. And if they get through that, they find it very difficult or too expensive to get through college. So there are enormous obstacles of that kind that have to be addressed. So I think there's a range of policies that way. And I say, finally, I think you will see a surge of activity in the area of infrastructure. I think that there is a feeling that the basic fabric of the country, literally the fabric of the country, the roads, the bridges, and so on, are in disrepair. And I think that's something where we could see a White House and a Congress, and both parties in the Congress, perhaps agreeing to move in those areas. I think that will help to make a difference, but I think the division in this country and the prospects for different segments of the population are so different now that, as many people have said, we really have two nations. We've seen this in other countries, including my own, in the early 20th century. So we've got to think of it that way and begin to recognize, those of us here in Washington who maybe are immune from a lot of the things that the typical Trump voter sees, have got to really be realistic about what needs to happen.